Good morning, everyone. Again, another Think Tank Thursday webinar series is here for you from Indian Institute of Material Management and Nirvan University, Jaipur. So today is a good day for us because we are fortunate to have among us revered academicians, scholars, and director of an NGO. Today's topic, the role of civil society and gender and civil society, is a very pertinent and relevant topic, and we are going to deliberate upon this issue today. This webinar series, which has been launched by Indian Institute of Material Management and Nirvan University, Jaipur, is trying to provide a platform to the academicians and researchers and leaders to come together to deliberate upon such relevant topics. To give you a brief overview, Indian Institute of Material Management is a big organization with more than 10,000 members, 52 branches, and 19 chapters of the professionals involved in planning, logistics, and supply of material and management. And Nirvan University, Jaipur, is a state university established under the Act 2 of 2017 and is located in Pink City of Jaipur. Nirvan University, Jaipur offers various diploma, UG and PG courses and PhD programs in various disciplines. And as per NEP or National Education Policy, it's an interdisciplinary courses are provided by Nirvan University. Kindly mute Mr. Aditya or Mr. Alok, please kindly do that. Yes, thank you. So today we have assembled here to deliberate upon the relevant topic, as I said, and we have with us most revered and respected academicians with us. We have with us Dr. Saroj Dhal, who is an alumnus of Jawaharlal Nehru University and Delhi School of Economics, widely traveled academician with more than, I don't know how many, more than so many paper, list is endless of the papers he has presented in India and internationally with China, Japan, USA, to name the few. His work is on urban sociology, migration and diaspora studies, and also on gender, and also working on transgenders with various chapters on Kinnar Katha and transgenders, a phenomenological study. Plus, he's also working on the books and writing chapters on gender, sociology, migration, and health of women. He has been involved in various courses, content development, writing books, delivering lectures, and also a guest lecture at Institute of Women's Studies, University of Lucknow. So I welcome you, sir. Then we have with us Dr. K.M. Ziauddin, who is an assistant professor in Department of Sociology, National Urdu University, Hyderabad. He was also a faculty at Jamia Millia Islamia and Jamia Hamdard, and he's also an alumnus of JNU and Delhi School of Economics. His work and expertise lies in urban sociology, gender politics, sociology of minority, and has been internationally acclaimed researcher, has been an international exchange program of US in 2019. He has authored several books on health in Dalit community under Cambridge Scholars and reading minorities in India. He's also an executive editor of Journal of Exclusion Studies and national convener of Research Committee on Minority Study. I welcome you, Dr. Ziauddin. Then we have Dr. Pravesh Dwivedi with us, a multi-talented man who's director of Samarth NGO. The NGO has been working in empowerment of girls, women, and has trained more than 1,000 girls in various skills. He has been associated with prestigious organizations like CARE, PSI, PHFI, and has been consultant in the gender-related programs and consultant in University of California, Stanford University, USA, United Nations World Food Programme, to name a few. So I welcome you, Dr. Pravesh Dwivedi. So we have among us Dr. Dhal, who is Assistant Professor at Department of Sociology, University of Lucknow. We have Dr. Ziauddin from Hyderabad, and we have Dr. Pravesh Dwivedi, who himself runs Samarth NGO. So we have the academicians, researchers who are working on the core of it, and we have Dr. Dwivedi, who is doing an hands-on activities under the Samarth NGO. So without taking much of time, I would request Dr. Dhal to start the deliberation on the concept and the relevance of the civil society in Indian context, or to tell you briefly, he has done a lot of work on it and published papers on this topic of civil society in Indian context. So please, Dr. Dhal, kindly start with the webinar.
Thank you, Professor Tanu Tandon. It's really my privilege to be part of this forum. And also I thank my friend who is also part of this program, Dr. Ziauddin, and my colleague, Dr. Dwivedi. It's really a privilege to speak on civil society and gender. At the outset, I must congratulate Dr. Tanu Tandon to put this idea that how both these issues are really important by looking at the current contemporary scenario, that the idea of civil society is not, of course, a new phenomena. If you go back to our colonial period, to post-colonial period, it was there very much with the existing of the idea of whether you relate with Gandhian model of looking at village or looking at tribes, that how we can empower them in a different way of looking voluntary organizations. The idea is also not limited within the Asian countries or European countries. It is also has a relationship with the larger idea of United Nations or any international organizations working for different communities. When we look at the idea of civil society, we mostly in Indian context, we find that how Gandhiji and Vinoba Bhave and people, there are a lot of people, they have worked in the grassroots level to understand the reality that exists with our people, our indigenous communities. I can remind you when British colonial empires reached our country, even they did not know about our language, culture. So who are the people who could understand the tribes or the indigenous communities and the local language and culture, and that can be collaborated with British administrations. So Britishers were clever enough to send either sociologists or anthropologists or those who are social worker or social activists working with the people, and they wanted to connect the mainstream. So this is the way we understand that how civil society emerged during colonial period or even post-colonial period in Indian context. Having said that the civil society, if you look at the 90s period of what we say that liberalization, privatization, and globalization, all these three ideas is a direct relationship with the idea of civil society, because civil society is not necessarily that we always consider, perceive it is something only non-government organizations, but it has a relationship with government or the state directly and indirectly. So it is not like that it has a responsibility going against the government or going beyond the government. It has also relationship that how it can work with parallel with the government. So there are people who can critically look at that how civil society has been looked at, that it is an alternative model of development. But it is not essentially, I am not convinced in that way that it is not necessarily an alternative model, but it is also a complementary model working with the people as well as the government or the state. So when we look at that how the emergence of civil society became an important instrument, if you look at from the government perspective or the state perspective, or from different angles, that people, those who are working in different academia, even whether you are part of the political agenda or United Nations or any international agencies, that how the civil society role we cannot marginalize or we cannot diminish. So here the idea that how it came an important instrument to understand the gender. You know, if you look at that how the uh, international feminist movement started with, that it is not certainly the idea it emerged as a feminist movement, but it has a relationship with that it is it could connect with the idea of alternative organizations who can work with the female or women or the movement related to the feminism. Not essential in European countries, even in America, even in Asian countries also, the idea of gender has a relationship with the non-government organizations or civil society organizations. If you look at the history of that, how the voting rights that became an issue in European countries or even in America, but it was not part of the Indian realities. But at the same time, this movement, whether it is African Black African movement or any racial movement, but it has always a relationship with gender issues and the gender debates. So now we'll consider that how the idea of government looking at gender was different of the idea that how civil society or civil social organizations or NGOs looking at the idea of gender. When we look at from the government or the state perspective, it is always a welfare approach to understand the way that we wanted to empower or we wanted to give the facilities from a welfare perspective. All these 5-year plans and policies, the government programs, it is a relationship with welfare. That means the government is thinking and doing something for the behalf or for the development of the women issues or the gender issues. But civil society or the NGOs, they are looking from a different perspective. It is not simply the welfare, it is also an issue of empowerment. You are not working for that, that you will work and there will be a welfare from the woman, for the woman or the gender issues. It has a relationship with that how we can empower them. And empower is not going to be understood or it cannot be interpreted from a state or from the government organization perspective, because you are just giving a welfare scheme, but that doesn't ensure the idea of empowerment. It is a relationship with that the NGOs and civil societies, they can try, they can involve the women group, they can involve the gender issues directly in a practical approach. So that means it is not simply they are outsider in the process of the development, rather that the women and the gender issues must be an insider perspective. So here that it is not simply your participation, it is also a responsibility of the woman that you work for the empowerment. So if you take 3 important issues, that how bhagidari, zimmedari and imandari, all these 3 becomes an important aspect to understand the empowerment of the woman. So it is not simply that even the government is working, that also it has a relationship with the people are directly connected to the grassroots level. You cannot avoid their role to understand the development. If you look at different moment related to the female, whether it is ecofeminism or it has a relationship with Narmada Bachao Andolan or even Medha Patkar, even Bandana Shiva, all these people are not necessarily opposing the government, but at the same time, they are giving opportunities of the woman or the gender part to think from a gender perspective. So how the development is not necessarily a goal which is a separate entity from the woman or from the gender issues. It must be part of the reality which can be understood from a different perspective by looking the participation of the woman. Now the idea of that paradigm shift from welfare to empowerment is not necessarily that the government is also looking, it is even the United Nations also looking at that approach. If you look at different agencies, whether it is Asian Development Bank or UNICEF or any international agencies, they are not simply working only the women issues, but by looking at what are these flaws that has a relationship with our social structure or social institutions. So you take examples, the idea of whether it has been started with the idea of the Bharat Ratna, or you can say Nobel Prize winner, that how somebody came from France and became an important model, to look at that how you can give the service to the people, that this is here. You can look at that context, whether it is Yusuf Malala or any other international recognized people, those who are working for the benefit of the women. So it is not looking at gender perspective only by giving importance to the woman, but at the same time, you look at from a liberal feminism perspective, that they are demanding their rights, but they are not denying the rights of male or any other stakeholders. So it is not necessarily that gender is looking at only the female perspective or giving importance to the woman, but at the same time, it is giving a platform to think that how we can have a better, it's like creating an egalitarian society by giving an opportunities also for the women or the people, those who are a part of the different stakeholders of development. So development is not necessarily that the government is going to do everything for that. That is impossible by looking at the 21st century, the model of development. If you look at every government in any country, you find there is a role, there are different external agencies are working consciously to understand the reality of development. It cannot be one-sided. It cannot be from a state or bureaucratic model of development. It is a relationship with the grassroots. So even you would look at the colonial period, or even the post-colonial period, or even this period of LPG, in all these scenario, we have a relationship with the looking at the civil society emergence and importance. But there are different way to understand that how, whether you go by the functionalist model of looking at the civil social organizations, that it is not merely functioning for the structure, but also it is a relationship to change the structure. So when you are giving an opportunity to different organizations, so I'm sure people will agree with the idea that the NGOs are not looking from a perspective of the idea of only developing the economic perspectives or any welfare schemes, but at the same time, they are also looking at how we can give a change to the structure where we can find some flaws, whether the structure has a relationship with patriarchy or any type of different social institutions, whether it is caste or religion, whatever. But whenever we find that there is a gender dimension to understand the development, so there is a role that how the civil social organizations comes forward to understand that reality of development. So reality is not simply that you are giving economic benefits, but at the same time, there is a relationship that to understand critically that why the structures and the functions, whatever we call, it is a part of the social realities, it has been existing in a different way of looking at that reality. So here the time, here we must look at from a critical perspective that government has to give that platform to all the organizations doing the development works, doing different welfare schemes or different participation works, or whatever the village development or the rural development or any development you do from a government perspective, but always you take care of the idea of NGOs. It is not necessarily they are working for the development or participating in the development process, but also they are the watchdog of the government policies. So NGOs are not simply working, they're also looking critically that whether the government is biased in any sense by looking at marginal communities, whether you are belong to the minority or any Dalit community or any marginalized sections of our society, whether you are woman or any woman within a Dalit framework or a minority framework. So it is the responsibility of the NGOs not simply doing working in a grassroots level, but is also giving a compelling thought to the government that it must work for the holistic development of the women or other marginal communities. So that gives another dimension that how the NGOs working as a model, not necessarily opposing or supporting the government, but is also helping the government to recreate or to rethink the development process and programs in a gender neutral way or gender equity way or you are giving a dimension to think from different plan or policies programs. So it is not simply within the model of the development, it is a relationship with political participations, how the women communities are coming. So recently, how the people of third gender, they have given importance by looking at UP politics, that today that Samajwadi Party has given the Payal, who is a very famous figure of the third gender community, become that leader and part of the social networkings. So he became famous overnight because the political dimension has reached that level that even we cannot avoid that third gender community. And it is really a matter of concern. And we must introspect that it is not simply in our state or in our area, it must go beyond that. So it is not geographically, we are looking at gender perspective, the role of NGO, it also gives a larger message to the larger communities. So we are giving a model to other states, to other countries, that how the third gender communities coming forward for the political participations. So now the Payal Foundation, who is working as an NGOs, so that foundation give another dimension, that simply that third gender is not working for the third gender community. Now they're coming forward for the larger community of the society. So the Payal, if she comes as a political image, so she is not going only giving the message or the development for the third gender community, but also gives a message that she can work for the larger community of our society. And this is the way that we can give them space for the mainstream. And this main MAIN, जिसको आप मुख्य धारा कहते हो, उसी मुख्य धारा में we struggle to give the women. Now there was a struggle for the third gender, so both now coming as an important phenomena to understand the current and contemporary situation of development, and that emergence, that critical notion of development, putting gender in a framework to think, to critically look at the idea of political participation or any development work participation, that gives a multidimensional approach to think beyond Indian society, or that society where we have we used to have a patriarchy, or we have a lot of structural problem issues related to the gender differences. So that differences must be looked at from the civil social organizations. So all these civil society, now they are giving space to the women, not necessarily work for the women, but work by the women, work of the women. So that is why you find that how the civil social organizations at least giving a space. So if you look at the academicians or the theoretical people, whether it were sociologists or anthropologists, they can theorize the issues, but the civil social organizations, they are not necessarily theorizing, but they are working practically at the grassroots level. They can understand not from theoretically, but from practical perspective, where are they, what they are doing, what is their situations. So real work is with that civil social organizations, because they are really in touch. If you ask any tribal communities or any marginalized sections, hardly the bureaucrats have the time to interact with them. But every day, every year, almost in all our societies, you find one or any other NGOs, they are interacting with the tribal communities or any other marginal communities. So their constant interactions and participation in the process of development, giving a different way of looking at the way that we wanted. So now we are moving towards that dynamics. This is here the importance and the emergence of civil social organizations for the gender development or the women empowerment is essentially a broad phenomena, and giving all academia or researchers to think not necessarily critically an alternative model, but as a complementary model of development and empowerment. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. And it was the way you connected the civil society with the political participation, encompassing all the genders, and you have taken to the next level. And the way you talked about the bhagidari, zimmedari, and imandari, which we have to proceed ahead, talk about it. That was wonderful, and it really gave so many questions in the mind, which will lead to more perspectives to it, and how we can also work towards it, like you talked about the transgender and the political participation, and also how they all are coming together to take it ahead. And also that it's not about the civil society only being NGO, it's also about critically analyzing the state policies and contributing towards it, that is more important. So in continuing with it, I would like to request Dr. Ziauddin to deliberate upon and throw some more light upon the role of civil society in gender equality and how he envisages and how he sees that. Dr. Ziauddin, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Tanu. Professor Tanu has been very kind to have this panel, and also because and this kindness is also reflected in the kind of panelist we have here, very good friend, Dr. Saroj, and all of you there, because now we all are, we don't feel that we have met once. And I would begin with this, thanking that Center for Women and Gender Studies, IIMM from Jaipur and Nirvana University. A collaborative work on these issues are much more appreciated by, at least we appreciate in academia, because that is very important, you know. And third is also because you have converged academicians and people who are at the grassroots, and they can always correct me. We learn from people like Dr. Trivedi is there, from Samar. We learn from people in the field. We go field for a while and come back. So thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Dr. Saroj began with the legacy we learned as a student at Delhi School of Economy, that bhagidari, zimmedari, imandari. This is one of the reflections of doing any ethnographic study. So when you locate field and the role of civil society, you need to see how it is, you know, intervening points and those nomenclatures coming out into the field. So he has minimized my burden here, and I would go to talk a little further that what we understand about gender equality. Vis-a-vis, when we talk of gender equality, we talk of inequality more rather than equality. And then I would go on to understand and examine how there is some role or minimum role, or, you know, what is the extent of role a civil society plays into, you know. So thank you for that. When we compare to any studies, as you know, when we read any studies and locate, studies on gender equality are still lesser than studies on caste, family, marriage, democracy, poverty, etc., or Indian villages in the country, in our country, and also locating the converging point of civil society organizations and gender equality has I find that it has not received still a popular demand. It still remains to be a restricted zone where people do not take up as their study, and until unless researcher and academia take up this, how can they understand role of civil society, you know? So that difference I still find it exists. And I also say, because last 2-3 days I was trying to see recent studies which was showing that yes, we need to do a little more about it. So in this presentation, I would like to see that the role of civil society in gender equality is one where civil society is considered very, very important pillar to uplift the causes, drive the wheel of gender equality between men and women, he or she we refer. So one hand you have gender mainstreaming in terms of practices regarding equality between men and women. So that is the whole social productions within the institutions of the society, and also in economic sphere, political activism, and all those paths and roads which brings good governance by equal representation, you know. And when we look at these terminologies, we also see Western societies in particular, that volunteerism of civil society has been very, very important in Western societies. They, in fact, the entire governance of Western nations have very, you know, they consider civil society organization an important partner into the democratization of the society, which we do not. In very contrary, in our country, we find what Saroj was in detail sharing, that civil society may not be opposing or criticizing. It is about rights. It is about putting things in a model and a framework, right? So here we have not been able to understand the embeddedness of civil society within our organizational network, that whether these civil society would play a constructive role hand in hand with the policy making process of the state, right? And then on the other hand, when we are talking of empowerment, we do not understand capacity building, which is brought in by the civil society organizations in terms of the kind of mission they have, in the kinds of framework of participation they put for us, the skill so much at the micro level, but so efficient skill management and accountability which we can learn from civil society organizations, we ignore at large, and how do we work? The studies have shown that our work is also not reflected because we do not learn from the community-based organizations. We ignore it. We do not, so what point essentially we say that the dialogue and intervention is based on the two opposite poles. It is not about sitting together on one platform. So civil society and academia is one, but are these two together create a model and understanding and some sort of richness in terms of policy framework and improve the policies towards gender equality is the very important question for us. So we talk a lot, and I would not go into detail, but I just put up to remind all of you who are very learned audience and scholars that UN also considers civil society as one of the important constituents in all its sources of ideas, policy, perspective. In any partnership they have, women organizations are considered very, very important. And I find very contrast when we are trying to understand in Indian policy making processes, the civil society organizations, when the policies are framed, framed in the sense there is a long process of policy making process where if I take an example of women and girls who suffer from intersectional discriminations based on not only on gender, but the kind of class, sexual identity, the ethnicity, the social economic background, etc., do not find important place in the policy making process. And that is how the entire movement and protest or efforts of feminist movement in India since 1970s, we find, have been more into this, So partnership has not been achieved. Partnering with the state policy is still a long thought of objectives which civil society organization and more specifically the women organizations who are particularly working for the equality of women in the larger spheres of political, economic, social, and other spheres of the Indian society. If you see, here we have important component in UN and international bodies where you have global level, national level, and they have civil society advisory groups, and then these groups dialogue. They have a sustained engagement at various level of work, and UN Women Group are very grounded. And I had chances of interacting with people in the past who are quite dedicated. But why? And while when we refer to a women advisory group or women constituencies of United Nations and or for example any other international bodies, we consider them as an alien group. We consider them as a group which is not part of the larger society. That is very, 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 very difficult because these notions are important. And where historically what Dr. Saravos was referring, if you go to the British period and colonial period and how the civil society organizations were seen. So colonial history shows that any organization which was there, it was against the British regime, against the British Act policies. The rule and governance may have changed, but the kind of popular notion which is there among the Indian policy making individuals and institutions remains somewhere, not exactly. So making gender visible by using it in our everyday discussion is very important. So let us quickly just see if you can read that, conceptually we have three different types of inequality which Pierre Bourdieu in sociology and social sciences they put into the capital, economic capital, which refers to access to money, social capital describing social relationship and institutionalized networks where an individual is part, And then third, he talks of cultural capital that would consist of knowledge, skills gained through educational training, cultural goods, and the kind of professional qualification somebody has. So even we take this typifications of Pierre Bourdieu on inequality, this helps us to understand the role of civil society. These concepts are important to see again and again what kind of inequality exists in the societies we talk of, and it converges across the nations, and that is very important for us to remember. So in common sense, somebody would say that gender inequality is basically unequal treatment of individuals based on the gender, their identity. But which gender, when we reclassify gender, are we talking about male, female, or third gender, or LGBTQ? Are we talk of? These arises not because by virtue of their identity, but what kind of socio-cultural constructions a particular society has created around those gender identity. That is important. For us, third gender would be a gender which we don't want to or don't wish to talk of. Large number of people do not want to talk, live about working and understanding the issues which has intersectional issues related to LGBTQ, right? We are at least comfortable talking inequality on the basis of biological difference between male and female, and that at least is a breathing ground to us. Now, when we understand we come to post-independent India, the process of development, when we talk in the entire development policy, if you read Nehru Plan, Roy Plan, and all the policy plans which were conceived in the 1950s and 60s, on which the large and very focused idea was that to get rid away from the extreme poverty, extreme unemployment, and at least provide minimum healthcare services to the poor country, poor population of the country, was the first effort, and that those efforts continued for few decades, though we do not fare well in terms of education, in terms of healthcare services to everybody. And healthcare services, just to clarify that it is about the public healthcare services to the people. So these are important points that creates multiple inequality, multiple layers of inequality when we talk of inequality between male and female or on the basis of gender. So gender equality is not only to see the differences, it also helps the state and then academia to see what kind of inequality we are talking of. Is it about gender roles, which is socially constructed? Is it about the discriminations, which is very unfair on the basis of being male or female? Or these inequalities are also very important, because when we talk of constitutionalism and in the from the lenses of constitutional provisioning, we find that gender inequality is a troublesome reality and social fact of 21st centuries. So we need to see that it was not a story of 20th century, but the continuation of those stories still exists in the post-independent India, and where every sphere of life is still governed and dominated by men. Largely we say that men rule the world. These uses are very troubling to academia, to civil society organization, and this is how the entire group of feminist scholars, feminist academia, and then civil society raises to change the uses of those nomenclatures, raises against and rewriting the kind of language we use. And if you read Judith Butler in 1990s, her writings are revolutionary and gives a lot of vision to us. So, and quickly, if I tell you that gender was first employed, all of us know that to see the biological difference on the basis of sex, but it is not that. Society nurtures those differences. Society uses those languages, and gender roles gradually gets replaced with kind of sex roles, they are beyond that being masculinity and femininity, but it is also the kind of roles assigned, and those roles are also important and essentially very important, which is associated with the physicalities, so physical presence, physicalities, and the kind of construction of society about being male and female is also very important. So therefore, what we understand here that gender inequality refer not only differences, it is also about unequal treatment to both male and female. When we say gender inequality, we quickly refer about inequality and treatment against female. No, we have to see also, is there any policies and provisioning which is against the male conceptually. Once we understand that difference, we need to see the degree of difference and the spheres of inequality where these are existing, and primarily we understand that the unequal treatment is more again towards female in India and globally, and these are important for us. We also therefore we use few concepts as well: social gender inequality, which I was just referring and explaining. We also have gender demographic inequality, gender or demographic gender inequality that includes that, in fact, that men live shorter lives on average than do women, except the recent NFHS data, which outnumbered the sex ratio of female in India. It's more than 1,000 of females in comparison to male. But historically in the country, we have found that the average life of men are shorter than the female. How do we see that? And we have to understand that context. I would not go into so detail, but we need to see that the degree and causes of gender inequality is throughout the world. The crime against women in the form of violence, female feticide, rape or war rape, honor killing are some sort of examples, or a kind of crime when a female member of family is killed for the simple reason that she has brought dishonor to the family. Imagining the female infanticide is still a social reality of our country, or sex selective abortion, which is very new with the arrival of so many advanced technologies, that has increased human trafficking, demographic imbalances, and sexual exploitations. Many of the studies which shows that in some parts of the country, Haryana and Punjab, the brides are brought from the other states of the country, and creating another challenge for the society. And that is another area of debate. But look at how gender inequality creates brings a lot of other challenges to the society. Inequality itself is a challenge. But when we practice these remains a perennial process, and that creates a lot of challenges. If you see this slide, I just wanted to say a few words. I don't want to go into detail. That SARC agenda in 1991, when we collaborated with UNICEF, they declared Girl Child Decade. You have a lot of plans about that. And there was rethinking to create and bring a new approach, to understand what kind of power hierarchies and stereotypes which is there in the society. So even the advocacy bodies found it that within the advocacy agencies and international organizations, there were hierarchy based on gender. Who is male, who is female. And that gender inequality was so dominant that international organizations first themselves corrected within the institutional procedures and gender inequality. Therefore, we say that gender equality vis-a-vis when we talk of gender inequality is a social process that may come through a deliberate, consciously framed policies, not unconsciously, and it has never come. No, it has never come. So where do you locate these gender inequality or gender equality? You have to locate in the formal organizations, agencies that work for gender rights, agencies that work with the state as partners. The international agencies work with various states So gender equality perspective is very important when we locate organizations. Without locating and putting, examining any organization, for example, any trade union would not represent male leaders, trade unions, peasant movement unions. There are certain union and associations where females are negligible in terms of leadership. Have we ever heard any female leaders, prominent leaders in the recent peasant movements, Kisan Andolan of our country? Have we heard about it? I remember mostly male members. Maybe I am biased, but we need to see where are they. Though large number of women were there, people were reporting about their work, their contributions. So how do we locate those special interest group? Is it that we do have some special interest group that do not allow mainstreaming gender equality, or it is just because it is there in the society? We need to see. I find that there is also a conscious effort to keep not having mainstreaming of gender equality based on where females should be more representative in voicing about the issues they raise about. So I have just discussed about that gender inequality has various phases. We have demographic gender inequality, social, political, economic spheres, and these all are very deep rooted, and we need to locate that. Now we can also figure it out. We are very fashion in terms of teaching, so saying what are the features you identify. So I would say we have also features of inequality, gender inequality, where we can say in the form of class, caste, ethnicity, race across the globe, or we also have other specific characteristics which is very regional in terms of geography, geographically located. Beena Agarwal gives 3 ideas. Gender inequality dwells not only outside the household, but also centrally within it. Second, she says that gender inequality stems not only from pre-existing differences. What is happening? आजकल हम लोग कहते हैं ये हिस्टोरिकली चला आ रहा है, ये हमारी जिम्मेदारी नहीं. We are very gender friendly, we are very gender equal, but and we label all the faults, existing faults to the history, but we do not understand the continuation of those. I'll take little 2-3 minutes and then wind up this. She also talks about gender inequality not only pre-exist in the noted forms, but how they can also arise from newly defined rules and procedures, that structure the functioning of governing institutions itself. In other words, when you form new governance institutions, are you locating the procedures and participation of on the basis of gender equality is important. And Beena Agarwal, we know that she has done a lot of work in the area of this. So it is these facets are very important for us to understand. I do not want to talk of much about Amartya Sen, but he wrote once that we have a lot of various forms of inequality in the society within the gender, mortality, natality based on basic facility, special opportunity equality, professional inequality, ownership inequality, household inequality. And friends, you will be surprised to know that for a long time, economists never worried about gender inequalities. They did not thought of, they did not care about, because the kind of studies they were doing, it was much more statistical on the basis of income, productions, and theoretical ideas, which was very confined. It was a burden, for example, liability of students of sociology and anthropology and civil society organizations to do. After a long time, after a long gap, they realized that, my God, half of the population are not contributing. And that is the reason some of the nations are not faring well in terms of their employment opportunities and work participation. And their contributions are very important. We need to address that. And that is the reason the role of civil society became very important there. That these interventions not came by the academic research, but how those civil society organizations took up those matters and brought to the before the academy, the policy making process. And remember, जब एक economist कुछ कहता है, government सुन लेती है. सोशियोलॉजिस्ट कुछ कहता है तो ये सब बोलते रहते हैं, दिस इज हाउ अनफॉर्चुनेटली फॉर अस इट इज दैट आवर वॉइसेस आर नॉट कंसिडर्ड वेरी सीरियस because we do not show the damage to the economy, we show the damage to the society and social institutions, right? So perhaps that is how we perceive the gender inequality. मैं दो एग्जाम्पल देकर I would like to finish this discussion, my point. I have two very interesting example, very interesting example. Recently, a few years back, there is a foundation, Rising Tree Foundation. They work not only in Jharkhand, but different parts. They work in Delhi, some parts of Bihar and others. And recently in October, I got a chance to visit in a break. They have trained thousands of young girls. Young girls mean girls in the age of 6 to 12, 6 to 13, about the life skills, how to live in the houses, how to work with the parents, how to bargain to gain school, access to a school, access to government school where you do not have to pay, because the fee is important barrier to poor population. And Rising Tree Foundation have done wonderful experiment. I also had a data about from their website. So when they talk of these are very important. Yeah, they trained 2,000 women and girl child in a very short period of COVID-19 period through various intervention, and it is all voluntary works. It is all voluntary. I'm not talking about UN agents. I'm saying how small at micro level, small agencies can bring equality through very small interventions and volunteerism. It's not Gandhian volunteerism, but volunteerism of the young women who have already lived a life of marginalized and discriminated. And we have another example of Safa Society. This was founded in 2006 in Hyderabad. This is the time when I also landed up in Hyderabad, just 1 year. And incidentally, we met with this organization. In the last 15 years, we find with the work they have done in urban slums, they have reached to various corners in the area of empowerment of women through education, skill training, livelihood, through production of multiple products and capacity building for economic betterment. So it is they themselves did without any major fundings, without any international support. And I find fascinating stories coming out from these societies. And these kind of civil society are thousands in number, not one, in thousands. We cannot have audit and studies on them, but we can definitely learn from the success stories of that. One of them is with us as very esteemed panelist now. Just he'll be sharing his stories from Samarth, that how civil society important. And friends, so what I mean civil society के आम मायने ये हैं, आम अल्फाज में, आम वर्ड्स में इसके मायने ये हैं कि वो तमाम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, वो तमाम तंजीमें, संगठन जो समाज में लोगों के लिए काम करती है, उसे हम सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कहते हैं, और जिसमें दखल अंदाजी सरकार की और किसी की भी नहीं होती है। लोगों के लिए, लोगों के जरिए, लोगों के बीच रहकर काम करने वाले संगठनों को हम सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस कहते हैं। इसलिए ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, वी नीड टू सी दोज एंड लर्न दैट। सो आई end here with an idea that I cannot conclude talking about I cannot say anything that what is to be concluded, we cannot conclude the idea and debate when we talk of gender inequality and mainstreaming gender inequality in the context of female getting larger participation in all spheres of life. So we only have a learning point here is that we have to understand and we have to learn much more about at the micro level from the civil society, how mainstreaming can be done, and at least, and perhaps we can do little more research, some studies, and also bring those stories and research into the classroom curriculum to make more meaningful to this. With this, I end my, I've taken extra time, I understand. I'm sorry and I regret for that. Thank you so much for having a patience here. Professor Tanu, over to you. Thank you so much. You may unmute.
Please unmute, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Ziauddin. You said sociologist बोलते हैं तो कोई नहीं सुनता ना. This is not right this time. Sociologist ने बोला और हम सब ने सुना, and it was wonderful.
धन्यवाद।
It was wonderful, and the way you talked about the gender inequalities in a holistic way, encompassing all the things. And since we have very less time with us, so without taking time, I'll call Dr. Pravesh Dwivedi, but I would like to again stress, Dr. Ziauddin, it was a wonderful session, and we were like asking for like, dil mange more time. We wanted you to continue.
बहुत शुक्रिया मैम, बहुत शुक्रिया।
Lack of time we had to do, but next time maybe we'll have again. But now we'll come to Dr. Pravesh Dwivedi, who will give us the real hands-on, real-time experience of how he manages and how he overcomes the gender inequality and empowers girls. Please, Dr. Dwivedi.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ranu, to just give me a chance to this wonderful forum where I have my colleague Dr. Saroj and Dr. Ziauddin from Hyderabad, and it's very good to know what is going on about gender. And I'm just sharing my screen, and just short of time, so I'm discussing also. So just before I hope everyone see my screen.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the topic is role of NGO in gender empowerment, and just very brief, I introduce myself also. Why I have completed my master's in women's studies in 2004. And when I have done my master's in women's studies, my so many friends in universities telling, why you are doing so? You can do, with social work or any other subject. Why you just, because of in the full of class, I'm only the male student. And that is just because of our commitment, I can say, or the way we are looking in the society. That is why I have done this. And after doing almost 15-year work in the many prestigious organizations, CARE, PHFI, and another, I formed this NGO Samarth. And behind why I have formed my NGO, what is just because of, as Dr. Ziauddin said, it is very much necessarily you have to do something concrete on the field, what you want to do. And when you are working in many other organizations, you have a project and you have to work on that. Either it is giving output or not. Whatever you want, you cannot do this. So after 15 years of the working experience, I formed this organization Samarth. And from my side, just because of I am the academician also, I also just having classes in Women's Studies Department of University. So what I have think, the role of NGO is actually on the gender empowerment. To first, I always say the skill development. Just because of when I have visited so many places, like I have visited Sidi, Saidol, it's a very remote tribal district. There also women always told us, we need something to do. We have time, but we actually don't have resources. We actually not have resources what to do. So when I have formed my organization, I am thinking we need to focus on skill development, because of if we just given so many I can say lectures, or we are empowered women, but problem is there when we don't have money. We know everything, we can't do anything. So the skill development is the actually first, and I think the major part from my side to do, if you want to do a gender development or gender to just gender equality in the society. And other than the supporting tasks like gender awareness, capacity building, supplement government efforts, political empowerment line, right, everything, like if I taught so many things to a woman on the right base, and she don't have money to travel a district office, how she avail the rights? If she is living in a village and she is not knowing how to go a police station, how can file the FIR? So the first thing is that, and so many people, when I have discussed this, so many people say no, nowadays everyone have money, but in the real situation in the field is not like that. What in the end, just what we have done, in so far last 3 years we have running, and that is also the totally volunteerism. Like we have run almost 24 centers nearby the Lucknow, and these all centers we have running 3-month entrepreneurial skill development courses where women can learn everything. Like they can embroidery, also they can lehenga, and so many things they can like.
डॉक्टर द्विवेदी, आप हमें वो बारे में भी थोड़ा सा बताइएगा जो आपने पैंडेमिक में जब आपने अपना वो जो
Yeah, everything. Yeah. So why I have started that? That is because of it's very connected. So we have running almost 1,000 girls we have trained in almost 2-year span, and that is only from the volunteering, only from financial resources which we actually earn. We use that. That is not supported by any big organization. That is all done by Samarth. So why I'm just telling, like everyone can do this in their own space. That is not needed so much money. That is only needed your willingness. So what we have done so far, almost 24 villages having 1,000 plus girls who train and who can earn, and they are working like our change agent. So they can motivate others also, and they can actually getting 500 to 1,000 rupees per month. They can actually we can say the part-time work, and they can earn that much money so that they can travel, they can meet their own expenses, because of the in the rural area they don't have the pocket money. So why I'm just connecting this, because of when COVID started, almost I think the 2 year back, March 2019. That time we link our program with the COVID awareness also. These girls, we just link these girls, they are actually saving the mask and just distributing their mask to the nearby village to stop spreading COVID. And they get the I can say they aware other people also to not to spread COVID in the village. And also we just, because of the first time when lockdown is there, we providing them cloths, and they are stitching that cloth based mask, and we distributed almost 15 to 20,000 masks to the slum areas of Lucknow. And then after I come to the point, like Samarth actually, because of our core issue on the gender equality or women development, women empowerment, so we have received a fund from the during the COVID relief with the UN and UN agencies like UN World Food Program, and that fund we received on the March on the August, and we have just very critically selected the beneficiary, and in our beneficiary list we have selected almost 1,000 female sex worker, and we have distributed that COVID relief food to those who actually in need and people don't reach there. So we have we reach almost 150 plus village in the nearby Lucknow district, and we have reached almost 1,000 female sex worker, more than 150 transgender community, more than 6,000 migrant worker. So like why I'm just saying, because of donors is not donors, is just told us to just give this to the beneficiary who is in need. But our angle is that we just find out that who is actually in the need. So we have to in the women development or the gender equality, only when we have always this in mind, then only we can do something on field. So because it's a lack of time, so we just quickly running slides. So these are the pictures with the transgender community in the Lucknow, and they are very well connected with us, and we have distributed everyone that rations. And then again on the gender development, what we have working with the men also in slum area of Lucknow, and you can see the sanitary pads we have distributed in the slums. Whenever we have distributed, we distributed to the men's in the slum areas. Why? Because of at least they will understand that is the necessary thing. It is not like that a woman can get these things from the ANM. And if A&M is not there, they can use any kind of the cloth. We whenever we just distributing these things in our areas, we always told we will give this to the men, and they come to us. Just only it is not like a matter of the publishing pictures, it is a matter of the awareness. And if awareness, only when they get the equivalent, they also think on that. So these things what actually we are doing in the field. We are also doing gender awareness session in the schools, because of the when we are just teaching as our sociologist panel also accept, like it is a matter of socialization. When a boy never told to just cook in the food in the kitchen, he never went after 18 years to cook food in the kitchen. So when we are just having gender sessions, we are always trying to get in the male, female, both are there, and it's good if we just going to the high school, inter, or the lower level. So we are actually we just giving some examples and asking them, do you think it is right or not? So how brainstorming will develop in the child, and he can differentiate within their house whatever she is doing right or whatever it is not right. So that we need to just create some ideas, create some model, some brainstorming in their own minds also. So again we are running in the field we also working and just the skill development, whatever I told, that is the core area. But with that, when we engage a women from the 3 to 6 months for the skill development, meanwhile we also just teaching them or different issues from the government policies, government schemes, and also why gender is necessary. And you can see in the image, like from 60-year plus old women and 15-year adolescent also participate in our programs, and they are actually very vocal in the field, what a 16-year-old women experience or bear, and what is suffering by the 15-year-old girls in the society. So it's very good when we have discussion in the field. They are making the charts, they are just express their voices, and when a 40-plus-year women just stand up first time and just express their voice. So it's very beautiful when we are in the field. I can't express this. So that is these models we are just doing in from our own space, and all these things, whatever except the food based distribution and from the UN agency, all models developed by us. The very well said girls in from our field कि हमारे समाज में रहकर भी इतने प्रयास के बाद भी बेटियों की स्थिति अच्छी नहीं है. आज भी बेटा बेटी में भेद किया जाता है, and that is we are not given these lines they are there itself, she is writing from their own words. So these things are still there in the field, and we are actually working with them, counseling with them, making them financially strong so they can raise their voices. And other things in the COVID, we have these masks which you have seen. These are the masks stitched by our village girls for the migrants. That this picture on the first time when lockdown is there and migrants going from the Lucknow to Gorakhpur and other Purvanchal areas. So we are distributing from the engineering college standing, and you know they are coming with the scarf and rumal. So we are just giving them proper mask. So these things we have done, and we have done so many researches also, the intra household food pattern distribution with the World Food Program. And always when we are in the field, we find it's need to give some strengthening with the financial resources and also with the gender awareness sessions. So very quickly, the girls child campaign we have done with the menstruation hygiene so many times within Anganwadi, within a school, with the men, with the IGNU. So from all the platform we are using for the how we can raise awareness in the practical segment. And these are everywhere you will find all works just related with the women and girls. And that is actually, as Ziauddin ji said and Dr. Saru said, so many people are there in the society and they are doing so many efforts. Only if we need the gender equality in the society and role of NGO. So actually role of NGO is that how we can start a grassroots people also think about gender, because of since long they actually don't think, if farmer actually don't think that is necessary, if their girls also going and just working, earning something, that is help to them, and that can be a strong pillar for their home. Because of in the rural areas, we also till date we find very tough to getting adolescent come out. These adolescent girls coming in the Cinepolis Mall of Lucknow, and first time they do a role play on the environment, and it's very tough. All 1 week they have just 1 week they have training, and then after when they reach that mall, they're saying we first time came that big mall, and how we can do a role play in there in front of the so many people are standing in the Cinepolis Mall. So it is actually the strengthening, and for our effort we can say these girls are coming out gradually. They are coming some ITI from the Kapurthala and other issues. So quickly I'm just running like what we are doing, and these can be done with everyone, only that needs some kind of your we can say your like willingness. Your willingness you can do, and several NGOs are doing these, as we have said, the Tree Foundation, Safa Society, we are doing in Lucknow. So many place people are doing. Only we need a support system from the public, and also we are just giving our effort to the government. They can create a model with that. Thank you, Tanuji. With a short timing, we have just.
Thank you, Dr. Pravesh, and it was wonderful. And your presentation in itself, in a brief point, explained that what all you have done through summer. And I have been like, I know that personally because I've seen you working and trying to even give I have been a witness to it. What exemplary work you have done through COVID and also helping the girls. And one thing which came out of it, it was that two things came out from your presentation which I could see. Dr. Pravesh, if you could stop presenting.
Yes.
Yeah. First was that the kind of work we need at the grassroots level, so that everyone is aware of it, sensitized about it, and like how you distributed the sanitary napkins to the men. So that is going via them, so that the entire family, the men of the household, they are also sensitized and aware about it. It is in line with what Dr. Ziauddin also said about that. Then when we talk about gender equality, we are only talking about women, we're talking about men and all the genders, and we're taking all into consideration. And like that's what you are doing. And another thing which stand out was strengthening, building the self-esteem and confidence of the girls when they came out to the mall and started talking. And also the people who are there in the mall, normally you have the people who are coming from educated upper middle class families, so they also get a awareness or a scope of thing or a brief thing that how people are working, what kind of people life they are leading, and what kind of support they need. And it encompasses all, it encompasses all men, women, third gender, and everyone. And it's all about taking everyone into the same thing, as highlighted by you, as highlighted by Dr. Ziauddin, and also as highlighted by Dr. Dhal. Dr. Dhal had to leave little early because he had another session in another college, much in demand, so he had to leave little early. But I'm so thankful to all of you, to you, Dr. Ziauddin, to Dr. Dhal, and Dr. Dwivedi for coming here and deliberating upon such a relevant and pertinent topic. And you all gave such different perspectives to it. Dr. Ziauddin, you really talked about gender equality in such an encompassing way that it seems like an umbrella term which holds in itself so many dimensions, which we don't even look at it. And and as Dr. Dwivedi talked about Samarth and the work he has been doing and the kind of work we all can do. we all can participate, pitch in and contribute for this. So I thank you, and on behalf of Nirvan University and from Professor Ravi Goel, who is our pro-president of Nirvan University, who himself is working a lot on gender equality and has been a record holder in creating this awareness about gender equality. I thank you all, and I look forward to more such sessions wherein we can have more time to deliberate upon such issues. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.